There's a dormant power inside you that Silicon Valley billionaires and occult practitioners have been weaponizing for decades. It's called the Seer, a fusion of ancient sorcery and digital consciousness. Watch until the end, because what you're about to learn will never be the same again. The Seer effect. Why billionaires see what you can't. Most people don't realize that the most influential figures in tech, politics, and finance operate from a completely different cognitive framework than everyone else. They've activated something that traditional education deliberately hides from you. The Seer consciousness. A state where you don't just predict the future, you shape it before it happens. This isn't mysticism. This is documented throughout history. The greatest military strategists, the architects of empires, the minds behind revolutions, they all shared one thing. They could see what others couldn't see. They operated with an invisible advantage that looked like luck to outsiders, but was actually a cultivated faculty of consciousness. The Seer is different from ordinary intuition. It's a targeted ability to collapse multiple timelines and recognize which reality is closest to manifesting. Ancient grimoires from medieval Europe called this temporal vision. Modern neuroscience is just now discovering that the human brain has dormant capacities for precognition that can be activated through specific neural pathways. But the real question is, why hasn't this been taught in schools? Because controlled populations don't develop Seer consciousness. They consume content, follow instructions, obey authority. But those who've awakened the Seer, they become architects of reality. They don't follow trends. They create them. Look at how artificial intelligence is being weaponized right now. The algorithms that control what you see, what you buy, who you become, they're built on the same principles that ancient seers used to decode reality. The programmers who built these systems studied occult philosophy. They understood that information is magic in the digital age, and consciousness is the ultimate technology. They're not hiding this, it's literally written into the code. The covenant of the third eye activation was a practice used by Renaissance magicians and modern consciousness researchers alike. For 9 consecutive mornings, you sit in complete silence for exactly 11 minutes. You don't meditate in the traditional sense. You simply observe your own thoughts as if watching a movie. By the 9th morning, something shifts. Your brain begins filtering information differently. You start noticing patterns that were always there but invisible. This is the Seer awakening. Chaos alchemy. How billionaires transform failure into fortune. Gancho. There's a specific type of person who doesn't break under pressure. They transform under it. When everyone else sees catastrophe, they see opportunity. This isn't positive thinking. This is an entirely different operating system running in their mind. The philosopher's consciousness is the masculine principle of pure transmutation. While everyone reacts to circumstances, the philosopher acts on circumstances. He doesn't ask, "Why did this happen to me?" He asks, "What is the intelligence trying to teach me?" Every setback becomes data. Every failure becomes a blueprint for the next iteration. This is why you see certain people start businesses that fail, then build empires on the second try, or take catastrophic losses and return stronger. They're not lucky. They're running a different algorithm. They've activated the philosopher archetype, the consciousness that understands that all material reality is malleable to the person who grasps its underlying code. The ancient Hermetic texts describe this as the great work, the transformation of lead into gold. But that's not about actual alchemy. It's about consciousness alchemy. The philosopher takes the base metal of his circumstances, the rejection, the poverty, the humiliation, and through understanding the hidden laws of reality, he converts it into the gold of wisdom, power, and material manifestation. Look at how the most successful entrepreneurs describe their journeys. They don't say, "I was lucky." They say, "I learned to see failure differently." That's the philosopher talking. That's a consciousness that has recognized that reality isn't fixed, it's a game with discoverable rules. And once you know the rules, you're no longer subject to them. The neuroscience here is cutting edge. When you deliberately reframe failure as information rather than judgment, you activate different regions of your prefrontal cortex. You literally become smarter, faster, more creative. But this capacity lies dormant in 99% of people because nobody teaches them the practice. The ritual of transmutation through fire comes from Western grimoire traditions, but is verified by modern psychology. You write down one specific failure or pain point. Then you ask yourself 3 questions. What did I learn? How am I stronger? What's the next move? You don't suppress the negative emotion, you interrogate it. You force your brain to extract the intelligence from the suffering. After 7 days of this practice, your relationship to adversity fundamentally shifts. You've activated the Philosopher. The Enchantress Code, how to attract everything without asking. Gancho, while men have traditionally dominated visible power structures, the women and individuals who understand the Enchantress principle have always controlled the invisible forces, the currents of influence, attraction, and manifestation that shape collective reality before it crystallizes into the material world. The Enchantress is not about seduction in the conventional sense. She's about frequency manipulation. She understands that consciousness emits a vibration, and that vibration either attracts or repels reality. Everything that manifests in your life, every person, every opportunity, every obstacle is responding to your frequency first, then to your action second. This is why 2 people can pursue identical strategies and get radically different results. The difference isn't effort, it's frequency. The Enchantress has learned to modulate her conscious and unconscious vibration to resonate with what she's trying to manifest. This is why ancient witchcraft practices focused so heavily on presence, on becoming so energetically aligned with an intention that reality had no choice but to comply. The modern world has tried to suppress this understanding because frequency-aware individuals are harder to control. If you believe your reality is a product of your actions alone, you're manageable. You work harder when told to, you consume when told to, you believe when told to. But if you know that your frequency is the primary creative force, you become dangerous to systems of control. You start questioning why your energy is being continuously drained. You notice vampiric relationships, energy-depleting environments, attention-stealing technologies. The Enchantress understands quantum mechanics intuitively. Modern physics finally proves what ancient priestesses knew. Observation and consciousness collapse probability waves. You don't just observe reality. You participate in creating it through the quality of attention and intention you bring. The spell of frequency elevation is practiced by high-level practitioners today. Every morning for 13 days, before consuming any content or checking your phone, you stand in front of a mirror. You don't affirm anything false. You simply acknowledge one authentic strength. Not, I'm the most powerful person alive, but I showed up for my commitments yesterday, or willing to learn. This micro practice rewires your frequency from shame-based to authenticity-based. Within the 13 days, you notice something. People treat you differently. Opportunities appear. The Enchantress is broadcasting on a new frequency, and reality responds. The unified self become unstoppable when these 3 merge. The rarest individuals on Earth aren't rarer because of genetics or luck. They're rare because they've integrated 3 distinct archetypal consciousnesses into a single unified field. They think like the Seer, transmute like the Philosopher, and magnetize like the Enchantress. When these 3 unite, they become something the ancients called the magus, an individual who doesn't just navigate reality, they author it. Most people spend their entire lives fragmented. They're rational in business, but irrational in relationships. They're confident with ideas, but paralyzed when facing uncertainty. They're mentally sharp, but energetically depleted. This fragmentation is a feature, not a bug. It's the default programming of domesticated consciousness. But when the Seer recognizes the pattern, the Philosopher transmutes the obstacle, and the Enchantress broadcasts the new frequency. Something extraordinary happens. You don't become superhuman. You become coherent. And coherent individuals are functionally superhuman compared to fragmented ones. This coherence is what separates people who build generational wealth from people who earn high incomes. People who create movements from people who follow them. People who shape culture from people who consume it. The difference isn't intelligence, it's integration. The ancient mystery schools understood this. Whether it was Hermetic traditions, Neoplatonic academies, or medieval alchemical circles, The entire curriculum was designed toward one goal: unified consciousness. They called the final degree of initiation the grand work completed. It meant the student had successfully merged the intellect of the seer, the resilience of the philosopher, and the creative magnetism of the enchantress. The modern world has fragmented this into separate domains: psychology, business, coaching, spiritual practice. But the real game is knowing that they're not separate, they're facets of a single transformation. The unified field invocation is the most powerful practice, but it requires commitment. For 21 consecutive days, you engage in a 3-part daily ritual. First, Seer. You spend 5 minutes observing patterns in your environment, not judging, just witnessing. Second, Philosopher. You spend 5 minutes interrogating one challenge by asking, "What is this teaching me?" Third, Enchantress. You spend 5 minutes embodying the feeling of already being the person who has solved this, not pretending, genuinely feeling from that timeline. After 21 days, you won't be the same person. Your consciousness will have reorganized at a fundamental level. What archetype resonates most strongly with you right now? The seer who sees what's coming, the philosopher who transforms obstacles, or the enchantress who manifests through frequency? Drop your answer below. This is the question that matters, because your answer reveals where your power already exists and where your next evolution needs to happen. Like this video if you felt something shift in your understanding. Subscribe to this channel, because the next tier of knowledge is coming, and it only goes to those who are ready to receive it. Share this with someone whose frequency needs to rise. The unified consciousness isn't rare by accident, it's rare by design. But that design can be learned. The real secret, what happens when you combine these 3 practices, is that you start attracting people, resources, and synchronicities that seem impossible. But that's the subject of a video can't quite release yet.